us all to take a second to think about his family and his community who are grieving right now. As the legislature met this week and for the past several months on these censorship bills, which have been now combined into this one bill, as Representative McDaniel said, without any real opportunity for input from teachers or from educational experts or even legislators who disagreed. And as we also met and are getting very close to passing a bill to move potentially billions of dollars of public school money to private schools, I haven't heard any discussion, literally any discussion in the legislature in this building behind me about anything that could actually help students to be more safe, that could help prevent tragedies like the one that we saw this week, could help to improve students' mental health, could help to actually improve the teaching of history, just to limit history. I will damn H5183 with very faint praise by saying it could have been worse. I think Representative McDaniel did a good job of explaining how much worse it could have been, and I think her analogy of lethal injection being not really that much better than any other form of death for the person who's dying is a really good one, so I'll leave it at that. But I would say the bill starts with some legitimately helpful statements that are the ones that should be guiding us about how we want to provide a learning environment which welcomes all students. I think that it's already been said better than I can say it, how we have never offered a learning environment that makes all students feel welcome, not throughout our state. I think there are individual teachers out there doing that. And this just moves further away from that. The real problem with this bill is, even if we try to improve it, is that it's fruit from a poison tree. The bill rolls out the same Heritage, National Association of Scholars language and a Trump executive order just sort of rolled up into something that we're kind of saying is about schools, but really it's about trying to win some kind of culture war that students did not ask to be a part of. The committee cannot claim they didn't mean to use that language, which is hyper-partisan, and it's actually geared more towards banning diversity training for federal employees than it is anything about school. They can't deny that because people testifying at these hearings, including me, told them. They questioned me about it for about 20 minutes. I sent them emails about the links to these model bills that they took the language from. And the goal of these bills was not to improve education or really to do anything with schools. It was just to silence people who are supporting diversity. You can't take that language and make it into something that somehow now makes classrooms more inclusive. And I think that goal would be great. And if we wanted to start over and do something that actually protected all of our students, I would be completely behind it. One of the most troubling parts of the bill that hasn't been mentioned is it prohibits any form of mandatory gender or sexual diversity training or counseling. And obviously there are districts that are delighted to hear that throughout our state, and schools, they're delighted to hear that. We said we were going to tell the truth, so I'll tell the truth too. There are districts that don't want to support diversity. I'm happy to not be in one of those districts, but there are classrooms and principals and superintendents across the state that love to hear that. The districts that will offer this kind of training voluntarily are now going to have a really hard time giving it to the people who need it the most. People who already support diversity and inclusion are not the people who necessarily need to be in those PDs. And I think, again, it's been said better than I can say it, how ridiculous it is to require impartial instruction on the historical oppression of a particular group of people based on race, ethnicity, class, nationality, religion, or geographical region. When I look out at my students who are predominantly people of color, and in some of my classes, young women of color, many of whom are in the LGBTQ plus community, many of whom are Jewish, how can I tell them that are multiple sides to the history of oppression, which for most of them continues to the current moment? How can I pretend that the issues that they face are not evil, or that they have an equally valid other side to them? The idea that history comes down to sides, I think is very problematic. History and current events are complex. The idea that as long as I tell you the Democrat version, I can tell you the Republican version, and then we've covered everything, I think is very limiting. The bill does reflect some evidence that committee members listened to the parents, teachers, students, professors, and legal experts who provided many, many hours of testimony on the first set of 5 bills. But it also reflects the abruptness with which this was introduced and passed without much discussion. I think it's worth repeating what Representative McDaniel said, that every African American member of the committee voted against this bill, or the bill was passed completely along both partisan and racial lines. It just indicates the extent to which this is not about making education more accessible or fairer or less partisan or less biased. It's the opposite. And I think also they fail to hear teachers and parents and students and others talking about the fact that history can be fair, it can be comprehensive, but it can't be just facts. It should be factual, but we can't just simply, am I supposed to tell students slavery existed? Now go and make your own decisions about it. There's no way for me to do that. As of February, over 1,121 teaching positions in this state were vacant. We've also done nothing to address that. We've done nothing but scare people who are probably some of your most invested and who value education the most out of the profession. People who are sort of indifferent to these issues will stay, and people who feel very passionately about them will leave. I think one of the best young teachers that I've ever met, that's not an exaggeration, is leaving not only education in this state, but leaving this state because she can't, in good conscience, teach if these bills are so close to passing. And when they actually pass, how many more people are going to leave? Teachers will tell you that talking about history, about race, about oppression, are already very difficult. They're difficult because most of us don't share the experience of our students. That's an issue that we should also be trying to address. Most teachers in this state don't look like most students in this state, and they don't have the experiences. So they're already difficult, and they're already fraught and emotional topics. And because schools and districts are already wary of controversy, they're already prohibited in a lot of places. So most of what's bad about this bill just reinforces that. The idea that it is not really directly prohibiting things ignores the fact that there are a lot of places in this state, again, where people already don't want to teach the truth. They already don't want to address the complicated parts of history. We really needed to push in the other direction. So even if this bill does nothing, it's going in the wrong direction. I've taught for 15 years, and these issues have always been hard. We really don't need the General Assembly at a time when we have a historic teacher shortage to make them even harder. Thank you very much.